Welcome to December the 8th. So it is Sunday night and we're going to do the Chen questions and answers. Aware that it's been a little gap again, which always seems to be a little gap, really. We have been quite busy with various things, as everyone is at this time of year. So
And you've had a much needed break, haven't you?
had a break, yep, had a couple of weeks off. Obviously, we've been pretty busy for near on a year, basically, with all sorts of things going on, obviously from Chen's aspect, and also the SRA aspect as well. So we've been pretty hectic. So we thought we'd take a few weeks, some recharge and downtime, and therefore Chen's had to wait for a few weeks. So let's get Chen in, and we'll get some answers to some questions. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Chen and yourself. I'll catch you. I'm going for sleep, basically.
Yes, sweet dreams.
I'll catch you a bit later. Good day, my dear.
Hello, Chen. How are you?
I'm very good myself. And how are you?
Very well, thank you. Yes, recharged from a little break.
Yes, it was a much needed time away.
It
for
was.
sure.
It was. Yeah.
Yes.
Andy was pretty burnt out. He suggested the break, so I'm very happy to go along with it.
Yes, he's been worked very hard,
Yes.
as you both have, of course. And everyone is finding the new energies coming into the planet also taking effect from a fatigue
Yeah,
perspective.
it's challenging, isn't it?
Yes. So when you're working as hard as you do, we're aware from a spiritual perspective that we do expect quite a lot from you from a human perspective. And of course, that means that the timeline that you're working with and the energy that you have to expend has to be recuperated at times.
Yeah.
So you have to stop to rejuvenate.
Well, I think I realised when Andy said, should we go away? I thought I'm most tired. We never normally go away this time of year. So it is it's generally the only time he actually stops. So
Yeah.
stops if we actually book something and have a break. Never normally stops at home. We have great ideas sometimes of just having a day of doing nothing, but that never happens.
Well, we'd like to keep you both busy, my
Yes,
dear.
yes.
You
yes.
can have a rest when you pass.
We're happy to oblige.
When you arrive back in my space and
Yes.
frequency, that can be your rest. But for the moment, there's no time like the present, as they say.
Right, okay. So, shall we? We've got 8 questions, actually.
Oh, good.
Yes, thought you might be happy with that.
Yes.
And 3 of them, the first ones are ones that have been emailed into us. So they've been sat in my inbox for a little while. Did you open your eyes then?
I was checking we were recording because then Andrew was in the background starting to fret.
Oh, right. Oh, okay. Yes, we are recording.
Yes.
Yes, you can reassure him. Okay, so the first question is from Elisa Coleman. When you and your team, the union, are performing a clearing, where do you send the negatively polarized entities, energies? Do you convert them back to the light or send them elsewhere? And how does this movement of energy raise the vibration of the earth? What type of energy is replacing it?
Yes, very interesting question.
Yes.
Yes. So basically, in the short summary answer is everything is, as you know, of vibration. So when we connect to a person that we would call our client and we scan the etheric field, we find entities attached or controlling, obviously, that person. So when we disconnect them, we basically remove that entity from this particular dimensional frequency. So we don't convert them to the light because, of course, they're negative anyway. So they're already polarized in a negative way. And most negative entities are negative in the same way that a dog is a dog and a cat is a cat. So you wouldn't expect a dog to be able to turn into a cat because you asked it to. So generally, most entities we don't negotiate with. We just remove them. We put them effectively, like you have with criminals, you put them in a prison and they're contained within a prison system. So entities are effectively removed from this vibrational frequency in this dimension, so they can't come back to planet Earth. They can't come back and connect to the client again, because of course that's what would happen if we removed them. They would literally come straight back and reattach, because of course normally they have some type of connection with the client, whether the client's given away permission or they've done substance or something. But there is a symbiotic relationship between the entity and the person. So they're removed from this dimensional frequency. And of course, as we remove that very low level negative vibration, then of course the frequency of the planet rises tiny proportionally. But of course it does rise, and that client's frequency can also then rise.
Yeah.
So they start to feel happier, they start to vibrate at a higher frequency, especially if they work on themselves and do some aftercare. So this is how we change the frequency of the planet, one person at a time. by removing all of this level of negativity that holds that
Holds them
vibration down.
Mm.
Does that make sense, my dear?
Yes, thank you. Yes, and hopefully
Good.
it does to you, Elisa, as well.
Yes, thank you for
Thank
that
you.
question.
Yes. Okay, so the next one is from Heather Ravenhall. Hi there, Jane and Andy. May I ask Chen a question? In all our lives, as we have the same personality and traits as well as sense of humour, are we always born under the same zodiac sign? I know astrology has a big influence and just wondered if this would be the case. Thank you for all you do, Heather.
Yes, it's a very interesting question about zodiac signs and astrology. The short answer is no, basically, that every time you incarnate, generally you come in with a different zodiac sign. And of course, the zodiac signs and the numerology is based upon the astrological aspects of the planets when you incarnate into the physical body, effectively. So that's changing anyway to a certain degree, but you may choose to have a zodiac sign based upon your personality and some of the life challenges that you have, but certainly that they're not fixed. So again, the next time you incarnate, my dear, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't be the same zodiac sign you currently are today.
I wouldn't be the moody Capricorn.
Well, there's not much I can say about that, is there, really? I wouldn't say moody, particularly.
Okay, thank you. Moving on.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Heather, for your question. Liam Mearns, I would like to explore the topic of numerology. This is an interesting one as well. I have a twofold question. Today was 11/11, so that shows you how long ago he sent the question in. It is used for the Remembrance Day event by the establishment. Question, what is the energy behind this event? And also, how can we use numerology for spiritual growth and manifesting happiness and abundance in our lives? Thank you.
Yes, very interesting question. 11/11 was quite some time ago, my dear.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Not that I would chastise you, of course.
No,
But obviously there was a slight time lapse between then and now.
Yes.
So of course, numerology is based upon numbers, effectively. And as we know, numbers come with energy. So this whole concept that your birthday is a very special day that you choose to incarnate into the planet because of the numerology that equates to that. And of course, the numbering system is used by the negative aspect in the same way that it's used by the positive aspect. So again, when you're looking to do certain things, we all know that if you align numerology, the dates and days you do things, connecting with the astrological aspects, then you can do things on full moons or on half moons or no moons. So you can use the energy that's entering the planet to either amplify or degenerate from a negative perspective the things that you're doing. So numerology is quite a fascinating subject, and of course it aligns very tightly with the astrological aspects of what's happening from that perspective. So again, to answer the question, of course, it is very prominent in all of your lives, just that most of you don't know how to use the numbering system for your gain. But of course, the negative aspect does. And of course, if the negative aspect is picking certain days to do things, then they're basically trying to corrupt the energy. So when something would be a very high positive energy, they may try and do something on that day to bring the vibration down, because of course that holds people back.
Interesting.
And it obviously stops the ascension process in its tracks to a certain degree.
Yeah. So on talking about numbers, can I ask you something? Quite often, I usually have to get up in the night to go to the bathroom, and very often it's 3:33. Is that a good thing, or is that a really bad time to get out of bed and wander around the house?
Well, again, it's an energetic thing.
Yes.
So it could be seen to be a very good thing, the fact that you're coming to at 333.
Well, 3 is a power number,
the 3
isn't
is
it?
a power number.
Yes.
So again,
and there's 3 of them.
Used in the positive, there's 3 of them.
Yes.
And of course, they make 9. So the numerology aspect is very strong and powerful at that time. But of course, what you can get is then the negative aspect could try to corrupt that number too. So people that come to at 3:33 may feel something in the room. They may be having a bad dream or having a nightmare. So therefore, the numbering's being used in a negative way.
Right.
So again,
I might lie in bed until 3:34.
Well, if you feel like you need to use the toilet, my dear, at 3:33, then you must you must assume that it's a positive thing, and that's when you go.
Yes.
And we had this conversation with young Andrew quite some time ago.
Okay.
Because he used to do the same. He used to open his eye and then he'd close it again.
Yes.
And he'd give it a few minutes, and I'd say, no, you must go.
Okay.
Because there's no reason you shouldn't be walking around the house at 3:33. So step into your power rather than stepping away from it.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you very much, Liam, as well. I hope that's explained things for you. Leah C. Hello, Chen. Thank you for everything you and the team do and for the opportunity to ask questions. It's interesting, actually, and I think I've got my own take on it. Chen, why do we open windows when smudging if the entities, etc., are not from from 3D? Surely they're able to pass through solid objects such as closed doors or windows, or is it more of a symbolic gesture? Thank you in advance.
Yes, very interesting question. So the short answer is it's more of a symbolic gesture because, of course, entities aren't vibrating at a physical frequency.
Yeah.
And therefore, things like walls and doors don't actually stop them moving around.
No.
So, of course, entities can, and other spiritual energies can move into spaces because they're not bound by physical things, of course. But, of course, from a physical perspective, if you go back in time, then religion used to use lots of smoke in cathedrals and churches and religious places and smoke the place out because, of course, it does change the stagnant energy and it smells nice generally. So it was more about creating a space that felt as though it had been cleansed from a physical perspective, but of course it doesn't really do anything from a non-physical perspective.
No, apart from the intention of pushing things out.
Yes.
As well.
But of course, if you invoked your guides, that would be a lot better, a lot stronger way of doing things.
More effective.
If you asked your guides to come into the space and clear anything that's there from a spiritual perspective, that obviously would be an amplification of that type of energy work.
More effective than smudging.
Yes.
Yes, that's what you're saying. Yes. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Leah. Penny Marshall. Sorry, I'm trying to read my own writing. Hi, Chen, Andy, and Jane. Thank you for all you do. I was wondering what you can tell me about the group of guides referred to as the White Brotherhood. And does it have any meaning to be supported by these groups, or are they a part of some individuals' normal guiding spirit teams?
Yes, interesting question.
Yep.
And of course, there are many, many groups. If we look across the world, we look across all of the different cultural aspects. We've got different religions, different cultures. There are many groups calling themselves all sorts of things. Generally, what happens from a negative perspective is a negative perspective tries to invert everything. So when something's called the white something, it generally means the black something. So they tend to use inversion quite often. So I'm always I would also be quite cautious when you hear of a group that use words that you would think to be good, because potentially that's probably, well, that group could well have been corrupted and then it could be negative. I myself am not familiar with this particular group that we're talking about, the White Brotherhood.
I've never heard of it either, but several have.
Yes, but again, I would have to question. Again, we would do a question of the sovereignty. So I would do a sovereignty check, and of course, the lady that's asking can do a sovereignty check on that group of energies to see whether they're working in the positive or negative, and that would be the short answer, really.
Yes.
Because of course, the sovereignty check is the best way to check everything. You can check. This is why we teach checking your own energy.
Yeah.
You ask yourself 3 times in your mind: am I sovereign? Yes or no? Am I sovereign? Yes or no? Am I sovereign? Yes or no? And you should, from the higher self, get the 3 answers straight back.
And you're looking for the word yes or no. You're not looking for of course or you know I am, or you're looking for the word yes, aren't you?
Yes, because of course imposter guides and imposters that connect try to hijack the connection, and the first thing they'll do is say those sorts of things.
Yes.
You're quite right. So they'll try and sidestep the answer.
Yeah.
And of course, the same when we're talking to spirit or spiritual entities and we ask them, are they from the highest light 3 times? We're only looking for yes or no's. We don't really want any other, of course I am, and so forth. And so, because they're not answers, if a spiritual entity says, of course I am, that's not an answer.
No.
It's evasion, really.
Okay. Thank you.
So
you're looking for, yes, thank you. You're looking for direct yes or no. Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Penny. Amanda Stevens. Hello, Chen. How often do family members become guides or part of your personal team? I've been told I have 2 guides, but a team of 4. Excuse me. Can you also explain what a team is as well, since you love 2-part questions?
Yes, I do love 2-part. I love 10-part questions as well, of course. But it's a very good question. And of course, most people in the group of energies around them, from a spiritual perspective, have family or ancestors.
Yeah.
So it's quite common. I would say 90% of people obviously have elected guides, and these are guides that you pick when you come in, as Andrew picked myself, Chen. So I'm his primary guide, but some of your ancestors or his ancestors are around the outside. So again, in Andrew's case, his mother and father have obviously passed. They come back occasionally to speak to me and to check up on things. They tend to have a look. As you know, my dear, they come into the room and speak.
Yes.
Sometimes.
Yes, the dog normally notices them first.
Dog will always notice
Yes.
first, but they don't tend to hang around for too long. So they're there to oversee and just to check progress, really, and just to check in. But most people aren't aware that their family members are coming in that close. So when the young lady says that she has 4 guides, she's probably got a lot more than 4. There'll be lots of people or energies in the background that probably aren't counted as a guide per se, but they're certainly there in a viewing capacity to watch and to help where they can.
Okay, and there's a big difference between being their guide and being in that role.
Yes, the guide
behind the
has the
scenes.
responsibility to help that person follow the Akashic path, if you like,
Yes.
or to hit the milestones that you yourself have chosen before you came in. So the guide has the job, and when you pass, the first thing you will do is sit down with the guide and say, how did we do? Because the guide has to get you into the right places, and they have to encourage you into the right places and the right spaces at the right times to meet people. And of course, this is what they use intuitive thought for, and they use the dream state to do that too.
Yes.
So when you have that thought that you weren't going to go out, and then you suddenly decide you will go out, you may meet a partner who then becomes a husband, wife, or something like that. So the guide has a job to basically push you into the right spaces at the right times, whereas other family members or ancestors that are just watching your progress don't really have any input particularly.
No. Sometimes bring messages, don't they?
Yes. Yes. And this, of course, is where mediums come in, because a professional medium can actually request to connect to a direct family member like your father or someone that's passed. And if your father or that person you wanted to speak to wants to come forward, the medium, who is professional, is able to electively connect to them and then start to pass messages.
Yeah.
And this, of course, is the role of a medium.
Yes.
In that way.
Okay, thank you. I hope that that helps clear things up for you, Amanda. Thank you for your question. Okay, so Kiran Bassan. Hi, Chen. Thank you for all you and your team does. Is it true that some people don't have any guides in this lifetime due to previously being highly evolved souls in past lifetimes? Also, another two-parter, is it possible to remove your guides if they're not for your highest good and appoint another guide that can actually happen, that can actually happen? Many thanks.
Yes, interesting. I like 2-part questions.
Yes.
So the answer to the second part is, of course, you can change your guides.
Can you?
So if you're connected, if Andrew decided he didn't like the way that I speak to him and the things that we're doing, he could request that he changes me. And of course, we would electively stand back, and then we would call forward another guide that would drop into the space and connect. So it's your life, and you have choices, and those choices are, you don't have to stick with your spiritual guidance, even though you must remember you did pick them to start with.
Yes.
So they're there as part of your own team that was picked by you, handpicked by you before you came in to a certain degree. So not many people choose to change their guides. People that do that normally have imposter guides that generally inflate the ego and promise them all sorts of things if they replace the current guide they have. And then they end up, of course, with a negative imposter guide that obviously takes them down the wrong path generally.
Yes.
So that was effectively the answer to the second part, or the first part of the question, really, is that, again, there aren't many people, or we talk about humans, there aren't many humans walking the planet that don't have a guide.
Okay.
99.9% that are human have a guide. There are energies walking the planet that are non-human, as you know.
Yes.
And some of those don't have guides. But if you look at some of the deities that have been here on planet Earth, so people like Jesus, those sorts of people, they still had guides, even though they had different gifts and different abilities.
Okay, so you're talking about entities, but they're in human form, or not?
Talking about entities that generally are masquerading as humans don't have guides. Well, some of them don't have guides.
Okay.
But most people that are actually human with a human spiritual energy inside, that's animating the physical body, 99.9% would have a spirit guide, at least one.
Okay.
But normally quite a lot of guides.
Yes, okay. Thank you. So the more highly evolved you are, the less you need. Would that be true to say, or that's not relevant at all?
It's not particularly relevant from
No,
that
okay.
perspective, because of course part of the big problem is when you incarnate into the physical body, you lose a lot of your abilities and you forget a lot of the things that you otherwise learned. So you
Yeah.
have to go back through the process, which of course is the big problem with this learning curve on planet Earth, is that even if you're quite highly evolved, unfortunately you have to grow as a child, you have to be bullied at school, you have to go through lots of experiences. So you don't just come in as some radiating positive entity that can do all sorts of things. You have to go through that normal path of growing up.
Yes. 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 Okay. Thank you.
Good question.
Thank you. Yes, it was. Which brings us to our final question from Layla Winshik. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, Layla. Hello, Chen. I have been wanting to help a family member schedule a clearing for herself. She isn't consenting to it. So is there any way that the SRT could work with her higher self to clear some things for her? Now, the only reason I fit this question in, we could have answered that on the thread, but I get emails quite often from people asking exactly that. So I thought coming from you would be a
Yes.
a good answer.
Yes. Okay. So the answer, of course, is yes, because the way that we work and the way that we taught, or when I was working with young Andrew and Terence, and we were obviously learning to do SRT in the way that we do things now, we learnt that most people that have intellectual control, so most people have entity control, they have intrusive thoughts, they're schizophrenic, they're hearing voices, their entities basically that are in control of their mental capacity. So trying to get physical agreement for a clearing or for a session is quite difficult because of course the entity is controlling the answer. So when you're trying to get agreement by someone that doesn't have their own free will, it's not going to pass. And this is where we decided we would sidestep trying to get the physical agreement from people, because of course you're not dealing with the person, they're being controlled and possessed effectively. But we can go to the higher self of the person, and of course the higher self is the part that actually makes the decisions to a certain degree. So we can connect to the higher self, and from a spiritual perspective, myself and the team can get the answer, which always, just about always, 99.9% is always going to be yes.
Yes.
They can have the session, even though they either might not want the session from a physical perspective, or they might not have been involved in the actual booking of the session. But the higher self is working for the highest good of that client.
Yes.
And therefore, if the session that we undertake is going to clear those levels of negativity and bring that client back into a sovereign state, then of course it's good for them.
Yes.
It's a positive thing. So the higher self will provide the answer.
Yes.
And that's our method of sidestepping this entity control. Because otherwise, if we had to get a physical agreement from every single client, half of them wouldn't provide.
No, because they're being controlled by the entity.
Because they're being controlled by the entity.
Yes, of course.
And of course, they're effectively possessed. So you're not even talking to them. They're being controlled, and they're talking through them instead. And this is that was one of the challenges that young Terence had back in the day, because of course we were still working on the concept of the old way of doing things from a spiritual perspective, that everyone must give permission.
Yes.
So we wanted to find a way that we could gain permission, but we could gain permission from the higher part of a person rather than talking to an entity that won't give permission.
Yeah. Well, he liked consent forms and things, didn't he?
Yes, Terence was old school.
Yes.
And of course, but things are more modern now.
Yes.
Things have moved on.
Of course, he had to be careful as well, didn't he?
Yes. And Terence wanted to obviously, well, we were taking Terence down the line of trying to do everything by the book to a certain degree. But sometimes by the book doesn't work, and we have to circumnavigate around using the same types of objectives, and of course not overstepping or creating any negativity. But there are, like everything in life, there's always compromises that you can make, and there's always ways that you can do different things.
Yes.
But obviously gaining the formal permission, if it can't be gained formally, then the higher self can be used to provide permission in that way.
Yes.
Okay, and that's what we do. We do that every day, my dear, as you know.
Yes.
Many, many times.
Yes. Yes, I know. Well, that is the summary of how I reply in an email. But I thought it'd be nice to hear it from you.
Yes, it's a very good question. So thank you for sharing that one with us.
Yes. Thank you. That brings us to the end of our questions, but I do have one for you.
Yes.
And it's a question that came up on the questions thread, I think, actually, on your own Facebook page, because last time you came, we were talking about Bashar.
Yes.
So I expect you know what I'm going to say because you'll have seen it already today. But I'm not particularly wanting to talk about what it's involving, the reason for the question, but sometimes you and Bashar have a different opinion on things. And so could you explain that?
Yes, of course. So the same as if we look at two humans that work in the same team or the same group, everyone is intellectually different. So everyone
Yes.
has an intellectual opinion. So you and I sit here today and we have the same likes, we have different likes, different dislikes, we have different likes. So everything is different. And from a spiritual perspective, it's the same.
Yes.
There are many ascended masters and people like young Andrew, obviously, that are here channeling energies like myself.
Yes.
So none of us speak the same. We're all here to try and give information, those that are working from the positive side. So we work from the same team, but the information that's provided is given in different ways. Because, of course, as all teachers know, if you give information in one way, only half the people understand it. So you need to have different ways of actually presenting the information. And sometimes myself and entities like Bashar don't agree on things.
Okay.
So I would still have my opinion based upon my understanding and my experiences, and another entity like Bashar would have his. And the two don't have to be the same.
Okay. And so you choose who you want to align yourself with
I like myself
on these things? No,
yeah.
not you particularly, but us.
Oh yeah, of course. You go with vibration. So if I say things that you don't agree with and don't feel right to you intuitively, then you must discard them because that information isn't resonating with you.
Yes, of course.
And of course, if Bashar gives information to people, and again, they either don't agree or it doesn't feel right, it doesn't sit right, then you discard it. So you take on board what vibrates for you and what you feel intuitively is correct.
Yes.
And of course, you've all got different experiences. So things that you might consider to be true from your life experience, other people may not see that as truth. So truth isn't black and white, unfortunately. Different people have different truths based upon their cultural, religious, and their upbringing and their parental programming levels to a certain degree. So everyone's living.
So they would align themselves with something that pointed more at how they've been brought up, wouldn't they?
Yes, if you look at someone that's been brought up on the Eastern Bloc, they're going to be very, very differently educated to someone that came from the Western teaching system, because those two teaching systems are very, very different.
Yes. Well, we align ourselves with you and your advice and opinions.
Yes, which is very good of you, my dear. And that's why we're here together as our team, if you like, because of course that's what we do. But if I say things, and there are things that I've said in the past, and there's things that young Andrew doesn't particularly agree with, and we have little interesting conversations, and then basically I continue to do what I want anyway.
And probably so does he, I expect.
Yes, of course. Yes, now who knows? There are times that I'm given the opportunity to use this physicality to provide messaging, and neither of you have any idea what I'm going back to say or how I'm going to say it, and the narrative that I'm choosing to give.
I know, Chen.
Which makes it interesting.
Yes.
I know this may cause some problems sometimes, but it's what makes life interesting. Because, of course, if I had to speak to you before these sessions and you had to filter the information, then it wouldn't be true from me, because it wouldn't be coming from me.
And that's why everybody loves you.
It would be filtered. Yes. Well, sometimes you need to have a narrative. Of course, this is what happens every day when you listen to your media. There's always these narratives that go out. They say the world's about to end. And then, of course, if the world doesn't end, people accept a watered-down version of control. So you start off a long way from where you want to be, and then you rein yourself back in. And we, of course, from a positive perspective, can play the same game. So we can give information out to people that we know is on the cards, and then, of course, we can have elective conversations based upon that too.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
That's okay, my dear.
As always.
I was going to say, where's the dear little dog?
The dear little dog is in my craft room, because the dear little dog wanted to jump up on your lap earlier on, and on Andy's lap at the time, and play. So he's been given a few treats, and he has been banished. Yes, for a better way of saying it. Yes. So I'm going to go and fetch him.
I thought I couldn't feel his energy at all. Yeah,
No.
interesting.
Did you want to feel his energy?
Not particularly.
No,
I just
okay.
noticed that he wasn't around at all.
Right. Okay.
And
No, he's
normally
not.
he is around.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, he's not been a distraction tonight. And of course, we've got a storm, which has been here for 3 days. So things are rather noisy outside. So I sort of assumed that he was going to be barking rather a lot at branches and things that are flying around.
Very good. The right decision, my dear, I would
Yes,
say.
yes, probably.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I
Right.
would like to say thank you for the opportunity to speak. Obviously, we'll do this before your holiday period, hopefully, if you can fit me in. I know you're
Christmas?
very busy.
Christmas?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, that's why I'm wearing my Santa hat.
Yes.
Mm.
Not that I noticed, of course.
No. No, yes, okay. So another one before Christmas.
Yes. So I would like to say thank you, my dear.